Hello everyone. In this video let's discuss the self property. Every instance of a type could be structure or a class or has an implicit property called self. Implicit in the sense that means we don't need to explicitly mention it actually like this, uh, which is exactly equivalent to the instance itself. If you're using self inside of a type, which is exactly equal to the instance of itself. You use the self property to refer to the current instance within its own instance method. So we use the self property to refer to the current instance within its own instance methods. That means as it is implicit, we don't need to explicitly mention it. That means we can directly write like this. So for example, if there is a, that is the reason for string class, we don't need to write string dot count or string dot length. We can directly write count. So generally in practice, we don't need to write self in our code very often. If we don't explicitly write self, what happens is Swift assumes that you're referring to a property or method of the current instance whenever you use a known property or method name within a method. So let's try to avoid using of self wherever it is not required. Okay, then where it is required? It is required in an asynchronous operations where if you this is an async, that means you are going out of the scope of this method. So if you don't perfectly use self, so here what happens is this block doesn't know what is the username. So that is the reason it is giving the compiler error saying a reference to property username enclosure requires explicit use. It's not implicit. No, why? Because you are out of the scope. Either you use like this, or we can also use self dot, correct? So we don't need to mention it if it is not needed. It is only needed when using the closures. When you are going out of the scope, then only self is required. So this is a good practice of omitting self, as compiler itself takes it as the instance of the type, which is a good practice, so that we can make a differentiation in the code saying, okay, here username is directly in the it's the property, and if you're using self is okay, that means I'm in a closure, I'm out of the scope. That is the reason I need to refer it with the self. So this is one of the best coding practices that I would like to recommend. I hope this video is useful. Thank you.